I've come down to a park lake today with the idea of seeing what's in it really. It's a bit of a lake that's well known for a lot of the carp being taken and poached, but there's rumours of some 30s in here. No one really knows, to be honest with you. No one knows what is in here, and it's a bit icy, so I've just been keeping my eye on it, just seeing if when this ice melts, seeing if I can see anything. But it is a park lake, so as you would expect, there's people come down here, kids, and they do things like this. They do a lot of, wow, throwing a lot of stuff in there really, and a lot of stuff has been thrown in. There's branches, beer bottles, and you can see there's going to be quite a few snags, so we'll be wading and trying to get a lot of this out when it defrosts. A lot of it has gone now. The ice is slowly melting, and that's after one decent night of rain, so with warmer temperatures. So about a week I reckon, and I'll get down here and see what I can see. But as you can see, there's a lot of stuff in there. I used to fish this when I was about 5 years old, and I'm now 21, so it's always been in my head. I've always known about the place. There's a lovely snag over there, a big fallen tree. I don't know if you can even see it, but I just want to know what's in it really. I've seen some decent carp during summer months when they're spawning, and you see them along the reed beds over there and everything like that. That's a duck. I thought I just saw something move. But it's a decent place. You don't get many anglers because they've all been told there's no fish in it, and the anglers that do come down here probably are, to be honest, poaching them. But I believe in, how can you poach a 30-pound carp? They're wise fish. If you're going to throw, I don't know, a bit of string into the lake with some fat old size 2 hooks or something, they're not going to fall for that. Have they been netted? There's rumours that the lake has been netted before, but there's a lot of hiding places. There's a big fallen tree, you'd never net that. The reeds come out quite far, you'd never net that. And it goes right round into the back. Where are you? There. It goes round in like a big loop. But I'm hopeful that we can find something. I can't see this big expanse of water being, like all the fish being taken out. I can't see it happening. Small fish, maybe they have took some, I quite believe it. It will be a shame if it turns out there is nothing in there, but it's going to be a lot of time wasted. I can see a big scaffold tube sticking out, probably about a foot out of the water in the middle of the lake, so I'm not 100% sure how deep it is. A few years ago I did chuck a deeper out, and the deeper did say there was some very deep patches, probably about 15 foot, but I could see about probably 8, 9, 10 of the foot being just weed, literally just weed during the summer. And from what we have waded out, it's very silty, very silty. But just the ducks walking on the ice is breaking it, so they're falling through the ice. So I reckon another couple of days and we'll be down here. So hopefully I'll be seeing you then. Right, so we're back down the park lake today, and there is someone else here, so it makes things a little bit more difficult to fish really, because where I want to fish is pretty much the whole length of the lake. So I can't really be doing that. So I've had a big lead about, and I found an area that's not weed free. There's a little bit of leaf matter maybe on the bottom. I've brought in quite a few leaves and that, and I don't feel too bad. I still can't get a drop, but I can pull the rod tip back and I can pull through it all. It's not difficult to pull through, so, but it's by far not gravel. but I can't really find much else, to be fair, so we're gonna put one rod on there because it's not very big. So we're gonna put one rod on there with a spinner rig, and probably a yellow pop-up, 12 mils, so something nice and small, and we'll probably throw a few baits around it and maybe spot some particle over it just to try and get them to grow around and clear the spot off, really. So we'll get the rigs ready and then we'll get them out there. Alright, so we're just going to get the spinner rig ready. I'm going to use some floss and get our chosen pop-up. And we're just going to thread this on. The lake here's got no ice on it now. There's maybe a little bit in the margins, but it's very thin, and I'm not fishing there anyway, so it's not too much of a bother. There's a nice fallen tree that I would like to fish, but that's the other side of the lake, so I can't really go all the way across when there's someone else here. But this is by far the better swim. You can reach the whole lake from here, obviously when there's no one else here. But it's just a bit of a nicer swim, really. You get less people walk by, there's a bit more of a walk. Oh, it's got stuck together. This floss is alright, it's just cheap actual dental floss, but it does get stuck together. Got it. We're just going to tie this on. These are all spinner rigs that I've sat and made myself at home or on the bank when I've had nothing else to do. And it should be critically balanced. Using some putty at the bottom of the swivel. It just makes it nice, quick and easy to change the hook if it's blunt or after a few fish. I'm just going to chop these off. And we're just going to blow them down. Move it to where I want it. The hook bead. These are barbless, but if there was a barb, it would be in line with the barb. You can see that. Alright, so that's one ready. I'm going to get the rods all ready, and we're going to get this one out then. I'll be back to you then. it's definitely a lot warmer. The temperatures have gone from being 0 degrees and at night time -4, -5, and then we've had now 3 days of temperatures at about 12 to 15 degrees. So that temperature change should hopefully bring them on a little bit and get them to feed. So that's both rods out. I think it's now time to put the kettle on. It's a little bit of a foggy morning this morning, but I haven't really seen anything move at all when I've got here. I've had a good look. This swim overlooks pretty much the whole lake. I have not seen any movement at all. So I'll position myself where I can see the water. I'm just going to be making a cup of tea and maybe have some food, but there's definitely enough food here to last more than a day session because I'm here for the day. I haven't really got time for a night, but hopefully just after Christmas, it's now Thursday, so Christmas Sunday, so just after Christmas hopefully be down here for the night, and then we'll see if that brings anything at night time at all. From what I have heard, rumours, they are nighttime bites, they prefer nighttime, and from what I've seen with other places, I think winter time they do come at nighttime, maybe a little bit more than daytime. But we're gonna get the kettle on right now. Maybe use the kettle as a hand warmer as well. Always a good way of doing it. Cup, you can't see it. Oh yeah. It's one of them ones that change when you heat it up. Also got my toasty maker, so gonna make some cheese toasties later on. In a minute, I've just put tea bags out. Some of the sort of tea bags, keep them dry. But I'm gonna get the kettle on and see if we can get anything at all. I do think the conditions today are spot on really. We've had some very cold weather for the last couple of weeks, and then for the last 3 days it's been nice and warm. So I say nice and warm, probably about 12 degrees, but it's a lot higher than in the -3, -4 at night. So having a couple of days of warmer weather, just give them a little bit of time just to switch on. And today it's been drizzly and a little bit dim, it's cloudy, so I do think we're in some good conditions. I think if we was to stay in the night, I think we'd definitely get one, but I still think we've got a good chance today. It's now midday, so we've still got probably another 6-7 hours anyway. With the weather being cooler, which means the fish are going to be more shouldered up, they're not going to be as active. So because of that, I am fishing really tight lines. And the reason for fishing really tight lines is just because I'm fishing for liners. If the lines are loose and slack, they're going to be on the bottom, so you're not going to get as many liners or anything like that. Whereas I want to be getting liners. Liners will tell me where the fish are, whether there's fish feed and where they are. If you get a really slow liner, just maybe a bleep or something like that, just a nice slow liner, there's a high chance that there's going to be that fish that's caught that liner is probably going to be near your hook bait, near your lead. Whereas if you get a really savage liner, so I mean like a proper it's a proper savage liner, then there's a very high chance that that's going to be closer to the rod tip. The further out it is, the less sensitive it is. So that's why I'm fishing for liners. I've had one slight little beep and that's been about it really, but I do think fishing for liners in the cooler weather is important. That being said, you don't want to be fishing so tight that you're going to move the lead really, because you don't want that lead to move, especially in places like this where it's weedy, there's a lot of debris on the bottom. You don't want to have to be moving that lead, because if you move that lead, that hook is most likely going to bury into something and you're just not going to know whether you're fishing or not. In weather like this, it's perfect. So you don't want to be wasting time by fishing 8 hours, not moving your rigs, and then bringing it in and your hook point's just not, it's just not covered. It's not covered. It's covered. So you just got to be careful not to move the lead. And that goes with when you're settling the line, so sinking the line, you need to be very careful not to move that lead. You move that lead and you could be fishing 8 hours for nothing. I did mention that I was going to be putting out some bait, and I said I want to put out particles so we can get them carp to just try and clean up the spot a little bit. So this is the particle that I've gone for. It consists of sweet corn, some pellets. There's different types of pellets in there. You got these ones here, which are bloodworm pellets. You got your normal pellets. You got your hemp pellets. You've got some half boilies, sweet corn, a few tigers, and some hemp. And all these small particle pieces should hopefully get the carp rubbing around and hopefully clean that spot off, and more importantly get us a bite. So to go with that, to add some more attraction, I have added some of this Response Plus, which is CC More Fish Bait Booster. You don't need a lot of it because it is very potent, very potent. I have also bought 2 types of boilies with me. I have bought some strawberry, and I've also brought along some white chocolate ones. They're very, very soft, which is important during this winter times. I think the softer they are, the less they're going to spook off it. I think sometimes they can tell how hard it is when they put it in their mouths, and I think they're just going to spit it. So I do think a nice soft boilie is very helpful. To go along with what I was talking about the boilies, I do think it's very beneficial to soak your boilies beforehand, maybe 48 hours or even longer, just in some water. If you do it at home, it's good to use lake water, just because you've got that natural lake water anyway. So I think it's just good to soak it in lake water and maybe add some liquids to it, any sort of liquids really, just something to boost it and just to absorb liquid into it. I'm not a fan of heavily modified baits in the aspect of bait boosters and things like that. I think if you're going to overdo it, I think the carp are going to know that. It's not natural. It's just not natural for them. I like natural stuff, but I have decided to fish with one of these on the hook. And the reason for that is I've gone for the yellow. And there you go. And the reason I've gone for one of the yellow ones is because I was planning on putting sweet corn out, which I have done now. There's also some tigers in there, so I just think that the yellow is gonna be fairly close to it. But more importantly, I think it's something that's just not over the top. It's not gonna stand out like a sore thumb, but I do think it's got something to it that they can just pick out. There's some boilies out there which are white, so I've also got that option of going over to something like a cream. If I can get the reflections not to be on it. It's not going to happen, but I've got a cream, or I can switch over to some krill white ones, which are, as you can tell, white. They are smaller. For this time of year, I prefer using smaller baits. I prefer doing it even during the summer, to be fair, as long as there's not any nuisance fish. And as for this lake, I don't believe there is. I think that there's not a lot in it, to be honest. So I think sometimes just having a bait that's a little bit smaller, it just makes them a little bit less scary. But something that sticks out a little bit, I wouldn't go with during the winter time. I would not go with something like a bright pink pop-up. I wouldn't do it. I think that needs to be saved for the springtime when they are just wanting quick food. I think during the spring you can pick up some nice fish off just a small bright pop-up, which is what I've done in previous years. Another good option during the winter time I found is some washed out yellow ones. I have never done too well on the brighter ones, but I think the washed out ones are a pretty good idea. And if you're going to go out with some washed out ones, you can try and get some free bait that's going to match it, so you've got a bit of a match a hatch going on. I do think browns during the winter are a little bit too subtle. I think the lake bed has got a lot of leaves on it during the winter, because there's obviously all the leaves come off the trees, and most of the leaves are going to be brown. So I think brown is a little bit, it don't stand out enough for me. I think you want something that's just going to not stand out like a sore thumb, but not completely blend in that you're not even going to see it. So I do think something like a yellow, a washed out yellow, not a really bright yellow, but a washed out yellow, a cream, or maybe a white, can always pull something out the bag when nothing else is working. I do think it's important to not constantly change it, but if it's not working and you should have had one, then I think it's time to change it. If you've had quite a few liners, I think it's time to maybe change the bait. And obviously if you're using pop-ups or wafters, that depends, for me, that will depend on what lake bed I'm fishing over and the conditions. I do think if you're on a pop-up, sometimes it's going to be off the bottom. Let me put these down. I'm using a lot of spinner rigs, so for me, fishing a pop-up rig would be it would be sitting off the bottom by about that much, which sometimes is good. Times like today, I think that's a good thing. There's a lot of rubbish on the floor, so I think that's about the right height. But when you're fishing over a cleaner spot, a gravel spot, or maybe some leaves, just leaves on its own, then I think sometimes that's a little bit too high. Why would you fish it off the bottom by that much when all your free bait is going to be flat on the bottom? So I think sometimes that's a bit too much. But during times now, for me, the reason I'm using it, I'm not 100% sure what's down there. I know there's a lot of leaves, I know that, but there's no drop at all. There's a lot of silt, and from previous sessions, there's a lot of weed out there. So I've gone for the pop-up for the aspect of that will sit over whatever's down there, and that's also the reason of putting out a load of particle, because the particle is just going to float down and settle wherever it needs to settle. It's not just going to sink to the bottom like boilies or heavier baits will. so I do think that's important. Also, the length of your rig makes a huge difference. If you're fishing somewhere like here where there's a lot of silt, I'm going to be fishing a helicopter rig. Majority of the time, helicopter rig is what I'm going to go to. But there is times for lead clips, and for me a lead clip is perfect for another lake that I fish quite regularly, which is just, there's just sticks on the bottom. It's not really silty as such, there's maybe an inch of silt if that, and I've never found the lead to plummet into the silt. So for me a lead clip setup is perfect. And to go along with that lead clip, on a lake like that, I will most often use just your standard, just an easy tied rig, just an easy rig to tie with a hair rig, and that is about it. And the reason for that is you can just use wafters. There's not a lot of metal work on it. The only metal work really is the hook and the swivel here, which this swivel you don't have to have. You can have a loop and put a sleeve over it, or you can loop it onto your rig anyway. So, but for me, this is perfect when there's not a lot of weed, there's nothing on the bottom to really bother it, or if you're fishing over gravel, it's good to use a bottom bait. So you could just have a boilie on that, and if that would be perfect for doing match the hatch during maybe the summer, when they're just scoffing up everything, so that can sometimes give you quicker bites. And on my other rig, I have got a Ronnie rig. I haven't got any Ronnie rigs in my box to show you because I have only tied one of those up, so it's a bit rainy, so the camera is getting soaking wet. But yes, so on that rig is a Ronnie rig, and the reason for that is it's terrible down the margin. There is bits everywhere. Every time I've pulled it back, there's been weed, there's been like silty stuff on it, there's been leaves, there's been sticks, there's all sorts down there. So I'm on a Ronnie rig for the aspect that it's probably going to be off the bottom by about that much, and that will really slow you forward. Very critically balanced using putty. Putty is a very important thing. If you're not using putty, then you're going to need something like BBs, but it's not as nice, it's not as carpy. So I'm using the dark matter putty, and the easiest way to use it for me is just warm it up in your hands. I quite often will use a lighter because it just takes ages. It's rock solid when it's cold, completely rock solid. You're not gonna use it. So just you need to warm it up in your hands, or in my case it's normally a lighter, and I will just use it on the piece that I need. So I'll just do the tip. That'll be enough. Yep, nice and soft. Get the piece that you need. And I'll quite often flatten it out so it's flat. And then I'll put my knot or a swivel into the middle on my rig. I'll fold it up and I'll just swivel it between my fingers to get it a nice shape. And you'll quite often need to keep testing it in the water, see how it sits. If it's sinking too quick, you want it to ever so slightly sink, so it's only just. It's very floaty on the bottom. So in that case, you just want to take some more off it if it sinks too quick, or add more if it's not sinking quick enough. But I think I'm going to get the bivvy up now because it's starting to really rain. Everything is soaking wet. So I'm going to get the bivvy up and get into the dry. Right, so it's that time of day. Make myself a nice cheese toasty. So I've got the old bread in there. It's hot. Some toast. Got my old toast on there now. And I've got the best cheese there is, Cathedral City, the strongest one you can get, and some butter. So we're going to have a nice toasty now. Still not had a lot of action. I've had no more liners anymore either. There is someone else turn up now. There's a couple of blokes and a couple of really young kids. They've turned up with a, I don't know what they're doing. Looks like they've got a float, but it looks like a sea fishing rod to be fair. But yeah, They've been a bit of a nuisance really. That's all you can hear is the dog. They've got a dog with them that's constantly barking. But it is what it is, what you expect with a park lake. The guy opposite me, he's still not had anything. He's fishing for silvers and that, but he's had nothing still, so make sure I don't burn my toast. I'm a fussy person. Of course, I have done it a little bit too much. That'll be fine. But yeah, I'm gonna get this cooked up and have something to eat, and then we'll go from there. So my mate's finally down here after ages of trying to get him to come down, and so he's just going to fling out a couple of PVO bags really, because he ain't got long until he's got to shoot off for work due. So he's just going to ping out a couple of PVO bags just down the margin where it's fairly clear, so we're just going to see how that goes.
Oh, okay.
Time for food.
Do you want one?
I'm good. He's finally come down and he's bought, what is it? Greg's and what?
Greg's.
What's in that?
Chicken baked bread.
Nah.
That's where it's at.
Sponsored by Greg's. So I said on the previous clips that there was a guy come down with a couple of kids, and it was they were a bit loud and their dog's constantly barking. Well, it turns out he had a bucket of bait, and all I can say is there must have been probably a good 2-3 kilo of bait, and he's literally just spotted the whole complete lake, and I mean the complete lake. One spot here, one spot there, one spot there, one spot there, constant. And he literally has probably spotted the majority of the lake. So I don't know what the point in that is. He's probably threw another couple of kilo down the margins of pretty much every swim. They said they're coming down tonight, but we were planning on maybe doing tonight. It's just perfect weather for it, but after that I think it might be best to not do the night here. It's just gonna be busy and they've spotted the whole lake, so what's the point? There's gonna be so much bait out there. So I think what's gonna happen is we're gonna head down to a different lake, a lake that we go to a lot, and most likely do the night there. We know it's gonna be just us there. There'll be no one else fishing at all. So perfect weather, so we need to take advantage of that really. It just means having to go home, get all the nighttime stuff, all the bed chairs and that, and then get down that lake and set up there. That'll be into a separate video. There's not very many big carp in there, but we're pretty hopeful, and I'm pretty certain that there will be some carp come out of there, just they probably won't be much bigger than 8-9 pound. But there's a few bigger carp, a few doubles, but it's just something to do, isn't it? And it's always good to get out on weathers like this where it's drizzling like it is now. I've managed to dry everything out after earlier recording, showing the rigs, and it absolutely tipped it down. So my chair got absolutely soaked, everything got soaked, so I got the bivvy up. The other half's happy. And he's just got down here sitting in the rain eating his Greg's. So he's all happy as well. Yep. He's got a couple of rods out, one flung over to a overhanging tree, which he ain't got to put bait out because that guy has literally spotted the hell out of it. So he's got another PVO bag just down the edge. So we'll see what happens. But I reckon we're going to head off to a different lake, probably a few hours. But in that time, hopefully we get something. But I think that guy's just ruined it, I really do. We'll see. Is it nice? Getting a bit wet there, isn't you?
Nah. Chill, man.
Nice and dry.
Yeah.
You said you didn't bring any drink with you, didn't you?
Mm.
There you go. Now you got some drink.
Always forget something, mate. When you plan to go carp fishing, make sure You write a fucking list.
Yeah, I've always write a list. You know what happens to that list? You forget about the list.
Yeah.
Literally, I've always written a list on my phone. You wake up in the morning, oh, all right, let's go. What do I need? That, sorted, let's leave, let's go. You get down there.
You write a list and then forget half of the list.
Yeah, at least I brought my sling with me, my big landing net with me, and my cradle. Nothing's been forgotten this time.
Only took us 3 tries.
Exactly. Rig change already. We've seen a couple of fish, possibly a couple of swells. It's hard to say whether they're carp or not, but at this time of year I think it's just important that we just try to move on to anything. So he's gonna put a single hook bait on a spinner rig and just put it to where he's seen some swells. Them swells have come up from where the other guy had been spotting, so we're just going to put a single hook bait over the top of it and see how that ends up going. Smelly. Citrus.
Indeed.
Straight through your finger.
Always.
He uses braid to put his hook baits on instead of dental floss. It's a little bit stronger, a bit more robust, but harder to get off at the end of the session. It's starting to get a bit of a mist on the water now.
A little bit.
You can just see the mist coming across it.
Happy days.
Whack it on out there. And he's even using that expensive old stuff. That don't last me 2 seconds, that stuff don't.
No. I think mine leaked out in the pot, which is
Yeah,
alright.
that's not too
At
bad.
least
At least it
in the
leaks
pot.
into it, yeah. I think I used up that stuff on the first few hook baits, to be honest. But anyway, walk down to the shallows. I'm not really expecting them to be in the shallows. It's not exactly the warmest, but it's very tight and weedy and snaggy, so there's a possibility that you're gonna get a few in here. It's a bit treacherous getting to it though. That's where I've fished from before. There is an actual swim there. But I'm going to flip the camera around and just so you can see what we're on about. So this is the shallow end. It's the snaggy shallows. It's not exactly the best walk.
Quite sandy. See along that bank. Quite sandy.
There is a swim over there that you could probably fish from, and there's another one there you could probably fish from. That one probably being the better one, but it's not very wide, it's very intimate, and it does look less snaggy over there as well. Here it's just, you can see all sorts sticking out of the water, whereas over there it looks a little bit better. But today's gone quite quick and the rod has not been ripped off, so it's a bit of a shame. But it'll be a bit more interesting if I do end up falling in though. Or if I can't see where the water edge is. It's muddy. It's really muddy. Coming down?
Can't look for any movement really.
I know. We have to get up in the trees where we are to cut them branches as well. Because you can't really cast. Whoa. I think during the summertime this will be a good little spot though. Maybe not this side. This side does look probably about a foot deep.
Yeah.
But the other side looks better. There's an actual swim there, so maybe it is a little bit deeper. Going by that log, what's that log? Probably 5 inches underwater. That's probably on the bottom, so it's probably only 5 inches deep there. And you can see the bottom over there, it's probably only a few inches. I reckon the other side must be deeper. Yes, I think we're going to be packing up soon. I've got to go sort out some stuff for a night session down a local lake. So that will be an interesting one. Probably going to be setting up in the dark. Got to go shops and everything to get food and whatever else. So probably just going to get a takeaway. Maybe even take it down the lake and eat it. I would do delivery, but it's at a farm, so the owner of the actual farm, yeah, he's not happy about that. So that's not going to be a possibility. It's certainly getting foggy now though.
Yeah.
It does not look deep this end of it, this side. Yo,
It's
ducks
not
walking
awesome.
through the ice, yep. That means trying to cart all the stuff back to the car. Horrible walk, and it's going to be uphill as well.
It's quite murky there.
Yeah. Uphill, and then pack it all into the car, go home, unpack it all so I can get the bed chairs at the bottom, because the bed chairs got to go at the bottom in the car, so it means unpacking everything to then pack it again. Get food, and then we will shoot off to another lake. And if he's not a wimp, he'll turn up as well. Put money on him not turning up though, so my odds are with me on that, aren't they? Aren't they?
No comment.
Yeah, he ain't coming. He ain't gonna turn up. But I'll definitely get down there and make the most of this. How his weather's turned for the better.